All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is your host, Tom Alemo. They call me Tommy Tahoe. Excited to bring you this episode this week, episode 190. So we're getting up there and we're closing out the year, closing out 2020 with a bang, hopefully with one last push on some of those last deals you have. If you need them, if you don't need them, maybe you're recharging, listening to a podcast, getting yourself kind of rebuilt up for the new year coming next week. So I will be in the latter camp. I'm actually pre-recording this one and going to spend the last week of December with some family and try to chill out and and get ready for the new year ahead. So I'm very grateful for everyone that's listening out here this week, and I appreciate you tuning in. I want to get straight into today's interview and straight into what we're talking about and who we're talking to and get this thing going. So James Nielsen, let me just say, there are few guests. This is episode 189, and I've had Hall of Fame athletes, I've had best-selling authors, I've had CEOs, I've had successful business people, and there aren't a lot of people that have the type of pedigree that today's guest has, right? In multiple different domains, right? So a lot of people are really good at one thing, not even a lot. Some people are really good at one thing, right? It takes someone special to be really good or great at multiple things. And that's what James Nielsen did. So if we go back to college at UCSD, James ran track. He was a 4-time NCAA All-American. He was a 2-time national champion. He was a 3-time academic All-American, and he was the president of his fraternity. He then went to get his Ph.D. in electrical engineering at Stanford. And while he was doing that, he also made the U.S. Olympic trials, and he was a professional Ironman triathlete. And he also was named the student teacher of the year in Stanford that year. So all of that happening, and he's also got a world record holder in the beer mile, which we talk about in this week's podcast. So all of that is before he even graduates and before he even gets into, the quote unquote real world. So that's just mind blowing. And I hope my mom's not listening to this podcast, because she'll be disappointed in my accomplishments, in comparison to James. But, in all seriousness, he has an electrical engineering degree from Stanford, right? A Ph.D. And he gets into engineering at Qualcomm. And a chance encounter with the VP of sales, James tells this story, but a chance encounter with the VP of sales then transitions him from an engineer to a sales engineer, right? And he spends 5 years there, really successful. And then over the next decade, he climbs up through the sales ranks to director, several VP roles, VP of sales and customer success. And then he was also involved in 3 separate acquisitions during that time. After all that success, James founded Vendition in 2015, which is a sales development apprenticeship program that gives individuals the training and experience needed to earn entry-level jobs in tech sales, right? So in short, he connects wannabe salespeople, sales development reps, with great tech companies. He also runs the Sales Bootcamp, the Vendition Sales Society, and he's an advisor for CreativeVentures.vc. So how the hell did we get here? So James, credits a lot of his success to waking up early, getting after it. He still wakes up at 4:30 every day. He's running, he's working out. That's how he starts his day. We talked about his career arc, right? How he went from an engineer into sales, and then why that's helped him actually, right? So a lot of things that, reasons that salespeople falter, I think, is we maybe get a little too confident. We focus too much on the art of sales, not enough on the science of sales. And I think with an engineering background in mind, he's been able to really have a more structured sales process that has helped him and helped his teams. And, lastly, we get into, the work Vendition has done for underrepresented groups in sales. For women, for people of color, for people that are just not, are not actively in, tech sales jobs as much as they'd like to be. how they helped to do a lot of that as well. And then we do talk about, to kick off the conversation, the world record beer mile that he has, which is pretty insane. So I think you are going to love this episode with James. He's high energy. He's got great advice for anyone that's starting off in sales. He is helping, hundreds or thousands of people that want to get into sales get in and get in at great companies. So if you're interested, first of all, go follow, hit up James on LinkedIn. You can sign up for Vendition if you're looking for an SDR job, or if you know someone who is, you can refer them that way. And second, show me some love. All I want for Christmas this year, or New Year's or whatever, is a subscribe and a review on the podcast. So head to Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the show. You can watch us on YouTube. Would love a subscribe and a review. You can then hit me up on social media, Tom Alemo on LinkedIn, at Tommy Tahoe on Twitter and Instagram. I respond to every message. I love connecting with people. It's one of the reasons why I love the show. So if you do find value, I'd love if you did that. Without further ado, let's get straight into the conversation this week with James Nielsen. Let's go. All right, James Nielsen. Good evening, man. Welcome to Millennial Sales.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, all right, we got to start with just a laundry list, and you might get uncomfortable here, but I couldn't not start off with the laundry list of your college accolades, right? So, two-time NCAA champion, four-time All-American, three-time academic All-American, National Engineering Honor Society, then to get his Ph.D. at Stanford, where he was running in the Olympic trials and was a professional Ironman. Did I miss anything? Is that about it?
That's accurate.
Yeah, that's all you were up to in your late teens, early 20s. I mean, that's amazing.
I kept myself busy when I was in college, that's for sure. And I went to college for a long time. Both of those things are very true.
Honestly, I hope my mom is not listening to this podcast, because she'll be very disappointed that I was none of those things. It's amazing though. So tell me a little bit about that, because I think that says a lot about you. So, all those athletic achievements, in track and field, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about like what that was like, and the dedication that you put in track and field early in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing a lot of different sports, enjoyed them all, and I was always quick, and kind of got into track and field in high school and realized that this was something that could go somewhere, and continued on beyond high school, obviously, and ran collegiately and had a lot of success and just kept training harder and harder. I think I take a very kind of analytical, data-driven approach to all parts of my life, in not only school but also my running, and so. I just was getting faster and faster and had some success and continued to leverage that beyond graduation as well. And then when I was in grad school, started dabbling in the triathlon world, bought myself a bike and, got some goggles and had a lot of success there. I biked a lot as a kid just for fun. So the biking legs picked up pretty quickly. And then, I wasn't necessarily a great swimmer, but I was also not terrible. I was, kind of mid-pack and had a lot of fun in the triathlon world as well. So it's good to kind of test your body, right? Test your mind. I enjoy getting up, exercising every day, still work out like a crazy man. And it's just a good way to kind of get the day started and gives myself some balance. And then allows me to stay focused on sales or engineering or whatever the heck I was working on at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you still doing races like that, or is it more toned down and you're just like working out?
Yeah, I don't really race anymore. I think, it's just it's not really that important to me. And plus, I feel like anything other than first, I would be really upset with myself. And then getting first, it wouldn't be that much pride because I don't want to go beat up on a bunch of people that are just trying to balance their work-life balance as well. So there's not a whole lot of racing going on these days, but I still run every day. Like to go to the gym and I keep myself busy.
Yeah. So, let's walk through that. I wanted to touch on that at some point. But the routine, right? So, you've been a salesperson, sales leader for,
going on probably, a decade and a half, 2 decades, and now been a CEO for 5 years. So how do you fit it in? Like, how do you work that routine, and what does that mean to you in the grand scheme of all of the other millions of things that you have to do in a day?
Yeah, for me, I mean, exercise is just extremely important. It's kind of how I calibrate my brain. I actually I don't listen to music when I'm out running. I try to just let my mind wander, think about the day. I like to do a lot of my thinking during that time, so it kind of calibrates for me for the day. And depending on when my day starts, it's usually I like to stay on a pretty strict schedule. But if things happen, then the way I see it, I sleep an hour less than I would if I didn't exercise, right? So if I'm out until 3 o'clock in the morning and I have a 6 a.m. meeting, well, then instead of sleeping for 3 hours, I sleep for 2 hours and I run for an hour. And I just, that's a little extreme as far as the
Yeah.
time goes there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just, I'll just, no matter how late I'm up or what I have to do, I'll make sure that I give myself enough time to exercise in the morning. So it's kind of just how I've always been and probably how I always will be.
Is there a time that, like, on a given day, I imagine every day is different, but in a COVID world, maybe not so much. Like, do you have like a set time you wake up a certain time and then you run a certain amount of miles, or it just kind of depends on what's on your plate?
Yeah, it's usually around 4:30. My body kind of gets up naturally at that time. I've been getting up at that time for a lot of years. It's varied probably between 4 and 5. I don't think I could sleep past 5 even on the weekends if I tried. So, and I think I dabbled at one point with around 3:30, 3:45. But I think the threes are just kind of a no-go zone for me. That's a
Yeah,
little bit too early. But yeah, I like a good 4:30 wake up.
I love it. I love it. I'd say that was when I'm thinking about in the last, 6 years since I've graduated school, that was one of the major kind of tipping points for me was like, oh, if I get up earlier, I can like get more stuff done and I can work out, in the morning, or I'll do some of this podcast stuff or blog or, some of the extracurriculars that just you can't get done in a normal work day, done in the morning. And it's like you kind of have that check mark in your head. It's kind of like you got that victory to start the day. And for me, that's always been really appealing. It kind of like gives you that little burst of energy that you need in the morning, makes you feel accomplished. Do you get that sense of satisfaction?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's nice to get up and get moving, get the day started before others are moving. That sense of accomplishment and yeah, gets the mind running, gets the body moving. And yeah, I have a hypothesis that if X is the number of hours of sleep if you were like fully rested, and Y is the amount of time that like charged you for, I think X plus Y is actually greater than 24. And so what I mean by that
Mm.
is if you sleep for 8 hours, you could probably stay up for longer than 16. So what people do is they sleep for 8 and they stay up for 17, and then they sleep in later and then they stay up later. And then it's just so like, it's not bad to wake up to an alarm. I think people would be just fine if they got slightly less sleep than their body would fully let them if they let it. So, but I have no research to back that up.
Yeah.
Other than
Plus,
my,
it just
go
makes
ahead.
you feel good too. It's like, if you sleep for 5 hours after, throwing home, 9 beers and you're out late and you have one of those 3 a.m. nights, like you're talking about, well, you might not be feeling good the next day, but if you're working out and, eating right and doing, some of the right things, then that it all kind of adds up into the equation. So I think sleep is just part of that, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And did I see, now this is not, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but except I kind of am off the top. But when I type in your name into Google, I see some pictures of and some sort of collection about like a world record beer mile. Is that a true story? Is that a made up like kind of a joke, or did you really set a world record
Yeah, no, that's a true story. It's crazy how that exploded. But yeah, I'm the former world record holder for the beer mile, and the first person to break 5 minutes in the beer mile. So when
Wow.
I ran a bunch of beer miles back in college and grad school, and kind of it's a pretty popular event within the running community. Not many people know about it outside, but you got thousands and tens of thousands of college kids around the country that are running beer miles. And I was the first person to break 5 minutes, recorded it, posted it on YouTube, went to work that day, and it just like took off viral. And yeah, I had ESPN come to my house with a 4 camera crew.
No kidding,
Yeah, it was
really?
like Good Morning America. I was interviewed live on TMZ, the Today
What?
Show. Yeah, it was like it went crazy. Front page of the Wall Street Journal. Like it
Oh
was
my
nuts.
God.
And yeah, it's and then everyone wanted more, right? It's just I think it was an odd combination to my talents, being able to run fast and drink beer fast, and somehow that was a worldwide interest story. And yeah, it was kind of now it's in the hands of professional Olympic type athletes. I think the world record's
Yeah.
down to like 4:32 or something like that. I ran 4:57, so I couldn't even in my prime, I couldn't keep up with the beer milers of the world today. But
Yeah.
I had my 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. Wait, so we're not going to stick on this too long, but just for people that are not familiar, can you just at least tell them what a beer mile is so they can put into their mind trying to do that in 4 minutes 57 seconds?
Yeah, so it's 4 beers and 4 laps. So you run a full mile, and you alternate. So you drink a beer, and then you run a lap. Drink a beer, run a lap. You do that 4 times, and you physically stop. So once the gun goes off, the clock counts it off. So the 4:57 includes the beer drinking and the running. So I think I ran like a 4:21 mile or something like that, and then and then another 36 seconds worth of beers.
Wow. That's just wild. All right. So, whoever listens to this and has the best beer mile, we'll give them, something for free, a t-shirt or something.
There you go.
All right. So you're at Stanford, right? You getting your PhD in engineering, and, I'm going just based off of LinkedIn research here. It looks like you got into sales engineering. Was there a stint before that, or did you go straight from Stanford over to Qualcomm?
Yeah, so I was not in. I got started off in an engineering position at Qualcomm, and then I got recruited into sales engineering right away. They wanted to put me in front of clients, and I had never heard sales and engineering in the same sentence, let alone know there was a profession. So I was quite confused about what that even was, and I didn't, to be honest, I didn't have the best connotation of what sales was. Right, I thought used car salesman, Wolf of Wall Street, right, trying to force people to buy things they don't need or want. And so, but once I got exposed into professional selling, I absolutely fell in love with it. And you're trying to find business problems and then solve it with technology. And I knew I found my fit. So I eventually became jealous of the sales rep. Right, they're the ones getting the high five from the CEO and the big commission checks. And I said, hey, I want to do that. And everyone thought I was crazy. They're like, wait, you're the sales engineer. You're technical. Why would you want to go be an account executive? I fortunately got my opportunity.
Well, sales engineers are just, I'm trying to think of an equivalent in sports, but I can't think of one, but they're so underrated, right? They
Yeah.
don't seem to get the recognition, right?
Yeah.
But, especially if you're in a technical sale, like I've got a friend that's selling in the security space, a very technical sale. And he's like, if I didn't have my sales engineer, like I would be broke. There would be no deals happening. I would be not hitting quota. And so, especially as it gets more technical, sales engineers, especially if they have multiple reps that they work with, it's a really hard, you're doing a ton of demos and really kind of the unsung hero of sales.
Yeah, for sure. No, I have a ton of respect for sales engineers, both when I was one and also, as a account executive and, head of director of sales, VP of sales. Sales engineers are crucial, especially in technical complex products, right? They are worth their weight in gold for sure.
So what do you think people saw in you when you came in as an engineer, right? And you're probably very highly touted. You had great grades, you had a great background. So I'm sure the engineering department was excited to have you there. Like,
Yeah.
what was there a moment where they're like, oh, this kid could be a salesperson or a sales engineer?
Yeah, so I met one of the VPs of sales in the kitchen. I was explaining to someone what I was working on. I was a brand new employee and kind of walking through one of my projects, and he came over and asked me my name, what I was working on, and he asked me if I would be interested in sales engineering, and I think he kind of thought I can put this person in front of clients. And then yeah, I mean, as those big companies, the sales leaders carry a lot of weight around the organization as far as what they want to happen often happens. So somehow they worked it out with my manager and decided to put me in front of some clients. And luckily I was so new there that I wasn't really adding a whole lot of value on the technical side yet. I'm sure they had a game plan for me, but I got recruited over quite early, and it worked out for them and me.
Yeah. I mean, I love that thought as a VP of sales too. I feel like the best leaders they can find good talent anywhere, right? It could be in another department in your company.
Right.
It could be, your waiter or waitress at a restaurant. Like, great salespeople can come from anywhere, right? So
Exactly.
I love the thought that he just overheard that and he was like, oh, this guy, we could put him to work. We could put him in front of clients. I love that thought, and then getting you developed in there.
Yeah.
And then, so looks like you spent about 5 years there, and then spent a decade just across different, kind of climbing the ladder in the software sales game, more or less, right? Manager, director of sales, VP role of sales, I think, and customer success. What was that climb like for you? Was that just kind of, you were just driven by some of the numbers, and like you're obviously a competitive guy from your athletic background, but was that what was driving you?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to get into a leadership role. I always loved coaching and managing and networking and just kind of teaching, right? And so, I taught a bunch of classes in both undergrad and grad school. I coached a bunch of sports when I was a kid. Not only did I play them, but I coached them as well. And so, kind of just wanted to, climb the corporate ladder, as they say. And so, I was definitely on a mission from day one as an account executive to move into leadership roles, and actually got my first management position in 2009 at Uyala, and I was asked to run the sales development team. And I didn't know what sales development was, nor did I don't think anyone else. Right, this was 2 years before Aaron Ross's very well-known Predictable Revenue book came out. Sales development was I don't know how many companies were had it back then, but this was in 2009, and I got offered. I think they wanted me to basically engineer and architect a pipeline for everyone. They said, all right, well, James seems to be doing very well. I was the top rep, over and over. And they said, all right, well, let's kind of let him architect how to build pipeline for everyone else, and then build out a team. So yeah, I got my first management position running sales development, and I was very specific. I said, I will do this, but my one qualifier is you have to let me get back into managing AE some days, because I could see, I wanted to go be a VP of sales, and I knew that I needed to show that I could manage closers, in addition to the SDR team. So anyways, I got to build out my first SDR team. I hired 2 reps, and the 3 of us worked very hard on creating all the playbooks and scripts and processes, and eventually got the AE team put under me about a year and a half later. And I spent a little over 4 years at Uyala, and it was kind of where I really, I think, grew as a leader. And when I left there, I got my first VP of sales job, reporting the CEO, worldwide sales team. That was when my career kind of took off as well. So there's been some key moments in there.
That's awesome. And when you were thinking about getting into leadership, even as an AE, like, it sounds like you had this vision in your mind. Was the vision VP of sales, or was the vision to run a company someday?
Yeah, I was not sure. I definitely wanted to at least run a worldwide sales organization, revenue organization. I think I went back and forth. I think early I always wanted to be the CEO and run an entire organization. I remember at one point, one of my VPs of sales, I asked him if he had aspirations to be CEO one day. He told me absolutely not. He said, I have one boss as the VP of sales. I'm in charge of revenue. I have one boss, which is the CEO. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at it. And he had this whole reason why. He said, everyone thinks the CEO is in charge, but really the CEO has 9 bosses, because you have a board of directors. You have all these people that don't really know all the ins and outs of your organization. They all have opinions on where you should take your company. And then you're managing 20 different departments. And in this one person's opinion, being CEO was not what he wanted. And so, I think he made me at least scratch my mind. But yeah, I think I always kind of wanted to either start my own business or eventually be CEO of a company that I grew from within.
So I want to get into your transition to CEO. Before we do that, I want to get to what I call the selfish section of the interview, where I ask one question specifically for me, and I'm curious, because of you do have such a unique background, engineer to sales engineer to AE to leader. I imagine that when you were an AE and even as a VP of sales, you were running a really, really tight sales process, like an engineer mind of a sales process. So I'm curious, like, do you have a tip for where does the average AE fall short on a sales process that your engineering mind maybe did things a little bit differently? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I'd say from an AE perspective, managing the closing process is definitely everyone talks about, uncovering the pain and kind of the gap selling, and how do you really, draw that, walk through the pain funnel, and so you solution sell. But I think really running a closing process is something that I think a lot of AEs can work on. As far as just, kind of backing into it is usually where you start, but working with the client to really identify, when do you want this thing implemented and up and running, right? And then not just like, oh, it'd be nice if it was in January. It's like, no, really find a compelling reason, right? How does that impact their business? And all those things you learned as far as walking through the pain funnel and uncovering, like, do that again for implementation date, right? And so really get them to agree of when they want it live, and then back up into all those milestones and get them to agree to it. So it's not just between you and your manager of like, yeah, we're going to get a verbal by this date, agree on pricing by that date. We're going to run through legal and procurement by this date. You want to do that. You want to do that in reverse, but you want to do that with your buyer. So it's okay, go live date, signature date, procurement date, right? Pricing date, and to kind of just walk through all of that, have that out, document it, right, in an email to both parties. So you and your champion, all the decision makers are agreeing to that buying process, and then you just run the play, right? And when days slip, which they inevitably will, now you're running against this and saying, hey, we said you were going to get this back from legal. That was 3 days ago. This whole project is going to be pushed unless we accelerate other days. We have to make up time, and so you really have to find that compelling reason, because there's so many A's out there, especially now between the end of the year, and they're forecasting these deals, and they're just like, yeah, it's going to close by December 15th. And it's like, what I always ask them is, what are the repercussions on their business if they don't sign our paperwork by December 31st? And if you can't answer that question, you have a problem, right? And maybe they'll sign it because they just like you and they feel good about it. But if there's no repercussions for their business, then signing January 1st versus December 31st, then why are you so confident in your forecast, right? So I think that's one thing, is just like getting that close, right? We work so hard on creating these opportunities, going through the buying cycle, trying to get a verbal yes. But as you know, because you're in it, like there's a lot of things that can go wrong between a verbal yes and a signature. And so I think that's an area for improvement for AEs out there.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring that up. I call that like I don't know, a mutual action plan or an evaluation plan or whatever you'd call it. I actually lost a deal this morning via email, unfortunately. And I was kind of doing a breakdown, a recap with my director, and we thought that we maybe brought that up too early. Like it was assumptively like unintentionally assumptive closing them.
Yeah.
That this is going to be the plan and this is how we're going to go through it. Do you think that's a common issue? Like you're building out that plan, but they haven't even said that you're their selected vendor yet. Like they're still evaluating that. You don't know, maybe we didn't ask enough about the competition or, some of those conversations.
Yeah. So obviously in a perfect world, you get that verbal and then you come up with the plan. But if you're creating the plan in parallel, then you have to be careful, because you're assuming all those, you're assuming you won the deal, and then you're kind of, backing into that. That can definitely be a challenge. But I think what you want is, you want to make sure that ideally you're selected, and then it's not you coming up with the plan and assuming they're going to buy into it. It's working on that plan with them, even, right? Get your champion, your coach on the phone and say, here's what we put together. What do you think? What should take longer? What should be shorter? And kind of let it be equally their plan as it is your plan. And then, you always tell people, obviously, like, you want to be on the same team as your buyer, and then they have to go run it internally, and you have to go fight internally. You have to fight with your legal or pricing, but you want to be working with your buyer, that it's you and them against everyone else. So that often works well.
Yep. Okay. That's helpful. We'll bring it back to the James story, but hey, you got to take your shot here.
Yeah.
So let's go back. You're running a worldwide sales organization, all revenue, even I think with customer success. And that was what you were doing before you launched Vendition, which was about 5 years ago. So could you walk me through the founding story? Because I think it was something that you were doing on the side, something that you were interested in. And then it kind of like got enough momentum that you decided to take it full time. So can you walk me through like what that whole process was like?
Yeah. I mean, we, in the sales world, we talk a lot about, in the engineering world, talk about product market fit. There's also founder market fit, right? So, I mean, I've personally experienced both sides of the problem that we solve. So on the candidate side, when I was transitioning from engineering, sales engineering into sales, I found it very frustrating that there was no sales master's programs or business schools or boot camps. It's just like, how do you learn this profession,
Mhm.
right? And the best advice I got was go buy a sales book. And as you know, you don't learn this craft from reading a book. So
Yeah.
I think even back then, it probably planted something in the back of my mind. And then, yeah, fast forward through my career, it was interesting when I was a VP of sales. I found that the SDR role was the hardest one to hire for, right? If I needed a senior field rep down in LA selling to major media companies, I would send my internal external recruiter after them, right? I knew how to define what I wanted. I knew how to assess them. I knew how to interview them, and I knew how to train them. And yet for the SDR role, right, it's like, what do you want? Like, recent college grad, career
Yeah.
switcher, competitive, athletic, musician. Like, I couldn't even define what I wanted. How do you interview someone for a skill set they don't have, right? I mean, you're right. It's always,
Mm.
one of the things I always find funny is that when for SDR roles, people ask them to do like an exercise, right? Either like a mock call or a cold email. And it's like, you're asking someone who's never been an SDR to write a cold email. Like, what do you think it's going to look like? It's probably not going to be that great, right? So, and
Yeah.
they weed out a lot of great candidates because they just haven't been taught yet, which is a big problem. But so yeah, so how do you assess them? And then training was just very time consuming, right? I was always, I love training more than pretty much anyone else out there. But it was a huge burden every time we brought in a new cohort, right? Because it basically shot the next month of my life as far as getting them all kind of trained and ramped. So,
Hmm.
I finally decided. I realized that other VPs of sales, my peers, had the same problem as me, and no one could find SDRs. They didn't know how to get them ramped up. Churn was high. And so I finally realized instead of complaining about the problem, I would solve it. So I set out on a mission to create the world's first sales school. And we quickly iterated on this apprenticeship model that we have, and haven't had to pivot since. So it's been good. It's been real good.
So were you had like customers like while you were still at your full-time VP of sales job? Like were you making money, or did you take a leap before you had any revenue?
Yeah, so we were when I was at Ustream, we were in the process of selling it to IBM. It took a lot longer than planned, but we were kind of wrapping things up. And my plan was to start, Vendition, this kind of bootcamp apprenticeship business after Ustream. And then a friend of mine who was actually the founder and CEO of a previous company I had worked at started a new business, and he asked me. He said, "Why don't you come in, build out my original team, build out my process, basically be my VP of sales." Until we can, do this boot camp, this school on the side. And so I agreed to do that. So I was kind of had two jobs, but I realized, I'm going to go all in on Vendition. I want to give that my all. So I was only there for a year and a half, and I helped recruit and hire my replacements, got that all ramped up. But yeah, I was working on Vendition for, a good year and a half before it actually launched.
Well, you hit a real pain point for me because, with no, it just isn't something that's taught in school. Sales. Like everyone I talk to, I always am curious how they get into sales, and a lot of times it's just a job that they randomly chose, or maybe a parent did it, or they didn't know what else to do. For me, I stumbled into Cutco sales in college because
Nice.
I got shoulder surgery, so I couldn't do my normal tennis camp that I would do, and so I did that and I loved it, and I, made some good money for a summer, and I was like, oh, this is a job. Like I didn't know going to a liberal arts college in Southeast Massachusetts that you could get into software sales and, make good money and have a fulfilling career and have all these interesting conversations like that. That just wasn't talked about. So I love just the mission that you're on, and trying to solve that problem, because there's just such a huge market of great, college graduates, potential salespeople that either don't know about the job or could use a little help kind of pushing themselves in there, as well as people that, are later in their life or later in their career that want to make a transition in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not just the students that are in college who are looking for sales education, which we can provide, but it's also, like you said, a lot of people don't even think about sales when they're in school. And so it's not really on their radar because there aren't majors or minors in it. And they don't know much about the profession. And then there's also individuals who are career switchers, right? And whether you're 5 years into your career or 20 years into your career, you're not happy, you're thinking about making a change, but tech sales is is not something you're considering because you just assume, well, I don't have an engineering degree. I wasn't a STEM major. I'm not a physics person. So I would never be able to sell technology. And, once you're on the inside, you realize that you can definitely be a liberal arts major and be in tech sales, but unfortunately, people aren't aware of that. So it's kind of marketing 101 is awareness, right? So that's a big focus for us, is just educating people on what sales is overall as a profession, and also what tech sales is. And so there's just, there's a big opportunity for us to just educate the market, which is going to take some time to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like, there's so much, great training out there for if you're interested in sales and you want to get better. Like if I'm an SDR and I want to up level, there's no shortage of content out there for them to get in. So what I'm curious about is like, how are you influencing, the 21-year-olds, the 22-year-olds, that this could be a good opportunity for them when, maybe they're going to go be an accountant because one of their parents was one, or because they think they can make more money their first year out of school that way, or go to be a consultant at, PwC or something like that. Like, is there how do you like kind of educate this huge market?
Yeah, no, I mean, people ask who our competition is. It's like, that's our competition. You nailed it. PwC, right? Law schools is our biggest competitor right now, right? People are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I guess I'll just go be a lawyer. And that's fine if that's for you. But, a lot of individuals are just not quite sure what they want to do. So I think that's a big part of it, is just, educating people on what sales is, and the fact that it's a great profession. You can make a big impact on your business. You can learn a lot. You can make a lot of money, which is kind of a nice bonus. And so, it's a lot of college students don't know much about it, or they think it's just cold calling, right? Like you're making $100 a day, for the next 40 years. And, that might not be the most fun thing to do. And obviously you have to do some cold calling as an SDR, but, once you move into an AE role, hopefully someone's going to cold call for you for the next 30 years. So I think, just educating them on what what sales is all about, and how much fun the profession is, right? I mean, again, kind of back to my Qualcomm days, you're identifying business problems and solving them with technology. I find that fun, honorable, very enjoyable. And I think, we have to somehow let people know that that's an option, because right now they don't.
And so are you folks like funded, venture backed, or are you bootstrapped?
Yeah, we raised a seed round years ago, but
Yeah.
we quickly we burned through most of that in the first kind of year and a half, but we quickly became profitable and cash flow positive. So definitely entertain the idea of, do we hit the accelerator? What does that look like? But it's quite different from my background working from VC backed companies.
Yeah.
None of them made money, right, until the day we sold. Even the most successful ones, none of them made any money. I can't remember, it was a Salesforce, I don't know, 15 years or 17 years. I can't remember what the numbers were, but yeah, so it's quite fun to just kind of reinvest in growth. And we've been able to be quite successful at that, kind of being small and independent, but we have ambitious plans just like everyone else. So
Totally. And the reason I was kind of bringing that up is, you mentioned that one of the things that you love doing is training salespeople, and you love doing that as a VP of sales. Did you ever consider just being a sales trainer? Like you go to, Salesforce and go train them up, versus what you're doing here is like, it's a high growth company that you're trying to maybe have a wider impact on people. And it's similar, but it's a different kind of strategy. But I was just curious, is that something that you thought about doing?
no, I think this is what I want to do. I want to get people, kind of, I looked at that large gap is, you're looking for your first ever SDR job. You've never done sales. You never sent a cold email, kind of that, how do we get you ramped and trained, right? So how do we get you from a white belt to a brown belt, right? There's a lot of great sales trainers out there that can take you from brown belt to black belt, and that's fine. And I'll let them all kind of fight over that industry. But yeah, we like these entry level, getting sales curriculum onto college campuses, helping put these boot camps together, and just providing free content out there for people that want to learn, and helping them get started, get their first job. I think if we were to go to, product number 2, I'll give you a little tease for Vendition, but if anything, it would be, it'd be moving from SDR to AE, right? So that, it's kind of like, step 1 is no experience to becoming an SDR. Step 2 is how do you go from SDR to AE? And I know a lot of great companies out there have training programs in place, but a lot of them don't. So it'd be great to kind of formalize and structure, what does that promotion plan look like? And also, I mean, I know no one's doing outside sales right now, but inside sales to outside sales, or how do you go from an AE to a manager, right? There's no sales manager,
Mm.
apprenticeships out there, at least to my knowledge. So I think there's definitely opportunity for us to kind of, grow within our space. But there's a big global market out there for entry level sales training. So we're pretty happy with where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't even get me started on getting into sales management and being no training. I got
Yeah.
just wiped up in my first management job when I first started it 2 years ago. Um, but okay, so let's say I'm a college grad and I'm going through the program. I had a little bit of a back and forth banter actually, coincidentally, a few days ago on LinkedIn with a few people about training because in my mind, I'm thinking about my sales career and some of the tactics and gap selling and spin selling and challenger sale. They were great and they're helpful and I use them. But I don't think if you give me all those tactics and I don't have the right mindset and the right attitude and the right kind of the things in between my ears and inside to like kind of get me going, I don't think that I'm nearly as successful.
Right.
So I made the argument that if I was training someone or coaching someone just starting, I would give them, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or Mindset by Carol Dweck or some like a book about someone like your mindset and growth mindset to get you going before touching the phones, before doing anything like that. I'm just curious what your take is on that and how you take people from like day one, if they have promise and they're coming through your program, what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's all about the attitude, right? You're looking for those skills, the grit, the work ethic, right? Communication skills. You're looking for coachability, right? Can this person take constructive feedback and then implement it the next day? Self-awareness, right? You don't want someone coming in super arrogant that think they know everything. Like, no,
Mm.
understand your strengths and weaknesses, and when you have weaknesses, let's work on them and fix them. And so, yeah, we're definitely looking for those types of kind of behaviors and personalities, and those are the ones that are successful. As far as all those methodologies and books, I read them all too. They're all great. They all serve their purpose, but yeah, you can't just give someone spin selling and say read this and then you're going to be a good SDR, because that's just not the case, right? So
Yeah.
there's some good frameworks in those books. Don't get me wrong. I love them. I read them all, and we implement bits and pieces. But yeah, it's about having the right mentality, growth mindset, self improvement. Right? You're gonna get up
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock in the morning and run every day to make yourself a little bit faster. Or you're gonna sleep in and hit
Yeah.
the snooze alarm 8 times. I mean, it's your choice, right? But
Right.
are you gonna listen to your podcast and try to just one time, or you listen to it every week and kind of just continue to improve, soak in knowledge, right? Read more books. So those are the
Yeah.
kinds of individuals that are successful.
I think we can all agree everyone should listen to the podcast every week.
Absolutely, absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
so I was actually chatting with someone that works for you, and one thing that she wanted me to bring up was that it sounds like you have a passion also for helping people, minorities, women in sales, people that are not maybe the most privileged or the most seen people in tech, which would be probably white males, so
Yep.
helping people that have a tougher time getting into the industry. So I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a huge focus for us from day one. Literally, our first cohort was 100% women and people of color, right? So we,
Mm,
kind of made that decision from a very early day. Is we want to help individuals who don't have those, like you said earlier. Sales historically has been, the golf club, right? It's kind of like generally white men playing golf, saying, "Hey, my son needs a job. Oh, why don't you hire him?" And then it kind of just
yeah.
goes on, and that happened. That happened for many decades. But there are a lot of individuals out there that just underrepresented, underprivileged backgrounds don't have those opportunities, so they're not even aware of them, right? We work with a number of HBCUs, right, which are primarily in the South, and so it's just like, how do you help all these young men and young women even be aware of tech sales, right? Not only opportunities in San Francisco and New York, which they're more than willing to move to after they graduate, but in region, right? Because there's a lot of tech companies with large sales hubs, in the South, different parts of the country, and so we work very hard to help individuals from a lot of different backgrounds kind of just generate awareness of those opportunities, and then walk them into our apprenticeship program at these great tech companies and really get their career started. So it's been it's made a big impact, which we're very proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing. What would you say to, company that wanted to, it's top of mind. It's been top of mind all year, right? Like since
Right.
some of the things that have happened this year that, obviously specifically for a lot of people of color, but I think it even raises the point around, women in sales. I know there's a lot of groups around that on LinkedIn. So like, what would you say if I'm a VP of sales and I'm looking around and I'm like, you know, a lot of my sales team kind of looks like me and maybe they
Yeah.
shouldn't. Like how do I change that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. One, it's having a good diverse sales team is one, it's just the right thing to do. But two, it makes your team better.
Hmm.
I genuinely believe that. Having diversity of thought within the workplace, right, in all aspects, it's extremely important to having growing a large successful organization. And so if it's all white men from the same university or same fraternity, right, like you don't have that diversity, like you have a weaker sales team because of that, right? So again, it's not just the right thing to do. It will make your team better. And then as far as how do you fix that, it starts with the top of the funnel, right? So it's just like, are you seeing a good diverse group of candidates that you're interviewing for, let's say, the SDR job? Because if you're not, you need to fix that, right? So, I mean, obviously you can come call us and we can fix that for you immediately. But even if you do it on your own, right, it's just like you have to make sure you're seeing a good group of candidates. So if you're asking, employee referrals is a popular way to find employees. And so if you're only asking your current SDRs to refer their friends, and all of your SDRs are white men, and most of their friends are white men, then what candidates they're going to refer to you, right? So there's just a lot of work to be done from a top of funnel perspective. And one of the things I'm really excited about with Vendition is that I feel like the SDR profession or sales is almost like the great equalizer as far as opportunity goes, because you're trying to diversify your software engineering team, right? Or it's like, okay, so who are the software engineers that are graduating from the universities that you're looking at, or which universities, and kind of like, we talked about men versus women, right? So it's being fixed, but historically the vast majority of computer science graduates at US universities are men. And so you're going to see a disproportionate amount of men in computer science roles. And so you kind of need to fix that at the college level or even high school level, right? So I have a young daughter, right? We're exposing her to engineering, software development, science. She wants to be a chemical engineer, right? So she's getting
That's
exposed to
awesome.
this STEM at a very young age, right? She's 7 years old. And so like if her and her peers are getting exposed at a young age, then that's fantastic, right? Because now you're going to hopefully someday we'll see computer science majors from Stanford and MIT be 50% men and 50% women, right? That's what we want. And so, but it has to start early. However, for sales development, right, it's kind of like I said, that kind of like the great equalizer, democratizing opportunity. There is no previous requirement uh, necessary. So you should be able to, if you want to see 50% men and 50% women for applying for SDR roles, like you should be able to make that happen overnight, right? Because you're not looking at multiple years of training or going back to 7-year-olds to do that. So I think there's just a unique opportunity within sales to make an immediate impact on democratizing that opportunity and providing options for women, people of color, individuals that haven't necessarily always had those opportunities within tech sales or tech in general.
Yep. And I got into a conversation earlier this year where people were, educating me on some of this too, and how, some of the verbiage and job descriptions can even kind of, subtly or not so subtly hint at what type of candidate, they're looking for, whether it's a gender or a race or a certain, just a certain quality about someone. And so making sure that that's something that you look at as part of the process too, so that you're not all kind of disqualifying people before they even apply to you.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And there's literally the way the job's written. Also, a lot of companies put company pictures up there, but if everyone in the company
Yeah.
picture looks the same, and then
Yeah.
you have this diversity initiative, it's like people are going to look at that picture and say I don't think I fit in there, and then they're not going to apply, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, businesses really need to work on their career pages and the job descriptions to make sure that they are kind of welcoming individuals from all different backgrounds to apply for the job, because again, then you're going to have the same problem, which is you're not getting the diverse group of applications, and then conscious or unconscious bias in the interview process is irrelevant because you're just not getting that top of the funnel diversity that you want. So it's a problem for companies that they don't even realize.
Yep. All right. So I want to ask you two more questions here before we wrap this up. So one
Yeah.
is, so building culture, right? It seems like Vendition has a great culture, and you seem like a high energy guy and someone that I would love to see in the office and give a fist bump to every day. So I'm curious, like, how are you translating that to a Zoom world and a Slack world to keep the culture? I'm sure you want it to be high energy and collaborative. And so how are you going about that?
Yeah, it's not ideal. I love being in the office. I love seeing the team every day. Giving everyone a fist pound when I come in, when I leave. So that's kind of, I definitely miss that. However, I think we do a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of collaboration happening within our business, obviously, because we have all these candidates who are looking for jobs. We have all these companies that are looking to hire. We have all this matchmaking process. We have our coaches. And so there's just a lot of collaboration that happens naturally. Everyone is very connected as far as Slack and text and phone calls and Zoom and Google Hangouts. And so there's lots of good conversations, lots of good energy. We have all these alerts built into our Slack, right? So we're giving everyone virtual high fives constantly across all parts of the business. So I think we do a pretty decent job. We did one like socially distant, this is over the summer, but we did like one socially distanced outside, masks on, 6 feet apart, like happy hour for people that felt safe to kind of go do it, which was nice because I hadn't seen people in like 3 or 4 months at the time. We haven't done one since because it's definitely not the smart move right now. But it's definitely, it's tough during those times. We do happy hours every Friday afternoon. So people can go grab a drink from their fridge or wherever and, kind of toast via Zoom. We do Monday stand-ups as a whole company, just kind of update everyone, all the different departments. So, we do our best, but obviously it's not as good as being in person.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're doing a great job though. So last piece, you mentioned, you have a daughter, we talked about the running, we've talked about the business. It's a lot to fit into that 24-hour window. Do you have a time management tip for us out here who are just, we're hosting this, the week before Thanksgiving, and I feel like I've got 10,000 things to get done before the weekend. So I haven't been managing my time as well this week, but do you have any tips for me on that?
Yeah, well, in addition to a 7-year-old daughter, I have a 9-year-old son. So,
okay.
yeah, he's a handful too. Time management. I mean, I think it's really about prioritization, right? And I think I'm a big fan of hard work pays off. I know everyone says like work hard, not smart. I would argue work hard and work smart. So, the people that I know that are the most successful with their life and career, they work very, very hard. So. But I think what matters is that people need to really just take a step back and figure out what's important to them. And if it's important to, the good thing about tech sales is that it pays very well, right? It's based on national averages. And I know out in San Francisco, it feels very expensive, but the reality is if you're an account executive at a tech company, you're probably doing fairly well for yourself. And so I think just taking a step back and figuring out, if you want to go out, this is pre-COVID, but if you want to go out 3 or 4 days a week, that's fine. Just be aware that don't be upset if someone leapfrogs you that started 6 months after you and gets that promotion, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, what's the priority, right? Same thing with, do you want to party or do you want to sleep? Do you want to party? Do you want to exercise? It's like, do you want to go build a prospecting list on Sunday or close the laptop and just watch 9 hours of football, right? And so there's nothing wrong with watching 9 hours of football. Just be aware that you're making those decisions. And so I think people just need to figure out what's most important with them. If the only thing that's important to you is career success, then just, be aware that you're not going to have a very fun social life, and that's totally fine. But just kind of make those decisions and then work on that balance. So think about where you want to be 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, and then adjust your time, right? Are you looking to get into a relationship? Then make the time to do that, right? And so it's just kind of, I think it is balance, but I think a lot of people are looking for this utopia where their just careers are taking off and they have all this free time and all these new hobbies. And it's just, it's easier said than done. And I hate to be the burden of bad news, but it's like, hard work pays off. And so I think it is about balance, but you just have to figure out what that looks like, right? And so yeah, just kind of, people need to make those decisions. And I'm very focused on my career and family, and it'd be great to go out there and play 18 holes of golf, but it's probably not going to happen for the next 12 months, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's a decision I made, right? So
Yeah.
kind of figure it out for yourself.
I love it. I love it. James Nielsen, where is the best place to find more about you and find more about Vendition, and give us kind of where's the best place to find all that?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty responsive for those emails. Reach out, connect with me. Always trying to help. We do these SDR to AE workshops every once in a while if people want to learn how to be an AE, both internally or looking for a new job. Putting free content out there, and then obviously Vendition.com. So our focus is on helping people find their first job as an SDR. I'm sure most of your listeners are already in sales, but yeah, if you've got a younger sibling or someone from your university that's looking for a job, definitely send them our way, and we'll help them out. That's what we do.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. This is a great episode. Everyone that is, if you're not in sales yet, or you have a sibling or a friend, check them out. If not, check out some of their content. It's free, and up level yourself.
There you go. Thank you
All
very
right, man.
much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much for checking out that podcast. I hope you saw value, whether you're, working out right now, or doing the dishes, or, laying around the couch, whatever you're doing right now while you're listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value. If you did, the only thing that you can do to really help me out is to share this podcast with a friend, share it on social media, and please subscribe wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is, and leave a review on Apple if that's where you're listening. That's what helps us to spread reach, helps us to get better guests, like the one that you heard just now, and to give you as much value as possible. So connect with me, LinkedIn, Tom Alemo, Instagram, Twitter, Tommy Tahoe, and subscribe, leave a review, and make it a great day. Peace. Thank you so much.